Welcome to the Lead at Home podcast, where every episode is about learning how to develop our parenting skills to achieve the best for our children. Here are your hosts, Sarah Franco and Jala Gaines.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to the Lead at Home podcast today. I am here with my co-host, Sarah Franco.
Hey, Jala.
And today we are going to be talking about what it looks like when you lead at home by facing fears that you may have. So, Sarah, do you have any examples or?
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty safe to say we all have fears,
Yes.
right? I know I do.
Quite a few.
And so I think one thing as a parent, I remember doing that with my children, is helping them face fears.
Yeah.
But we also have to face our own fears too. We want to, again, lead by example.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot around here. And also then teach our children to face their fears. When we first adopted our son from Ethiopia, all these books have all this information about attachment and just adjusting to all being together and the maybe common problems you may come across. Not one of them had mentioned, and it did not cross my mind, a fear of our dog. He was terrified, and I hadn't even thought about it. So we had a chocolate lab, sweet as could be. She wouldn't hurt a fly. And, he came home, and I think we may even have it on video. The first moment he saw her, he screamed and immediately wanted picked up. He was shaking. He was terrified. Absolutely terrified of her. And this went on for a couple of weeks. He could not even see her through the glass sliding door.
No.
So fortunately we have different levels in the house, and we would kind of let each other know, like, okay, we're letting the dog out, make sure he stays up there, something like that. And, I don't even know how we came to get them in the same room, but he was, he's just 2 years old, little guy standing on the very back of the couch, as far back as he could. And we had a tennis ball, and he threw the tennis ball, and she went after it and brought it back. And he just thought that was so funny. He just thought it was so fun.
That's so cute.
And so it happened again and again. And eventually he started to see, and he could see, like, we tried to model in front of him, like, she's not going to hurt you. She loves us. We give her hugs. And we knew she was a safe dog, so we could do that. Within about 2 weeks, then they could finally be in the room together without him being upset. And I tell you, no lie, within a very short period of time after that, I have pictures of him basically using her like a pillow. I mean,
That's so
it
sweet.
was, they were buddies. And within, she died when he was in ninth grade, I think. And within 2 weeks, he's like, Mom, I want another dog.
Oh.
Like, I really miss her. And he wanted that companionship. So, here we went from a child who was just terrified to now he cannot imagine life without a dog. And so I think there are things that we can do to help our children work through those. And so they may not naturally want to do that on their own. Caleb would not have naturally done that. And I am thinking, like, in my own life, I think with him, I don't know if he would have gotten over that fear if we didn't have a dog in our home. Now, obviously, you got to be wise about these things, but I think that regular exposure and the being around these people that he loved and trusted
Yeah, that's good.
set that example.
Yeah.
And so just a thought for those kinds of things. There's a lot of different fears that our children can have. There's a lot of fears we can have. But I think we want to be careful not to put our kids in a box that says, well, this is just how they are, and not challenge them and maybe help them to move forward a little bit more, and take baby steps. We don't need to be extreme about it, but just to help them, because in the end, you're serving them for their future. Yeah. Like I always have to remember when I'm raising my children, I'm raising future adults. And so do I want them, like really fear can be paralyzing.
No, absolutely.
And just stop you in your tracks, stop you from pursuing a job or a relationship or moving somewhere because, well, this is all I've ever known.
Yes.
So how have you kind of seen that played out in your own life, Jayla?
I'm thinking of so many different... I'm trying to decide which one I go with
through life, right?
Yes.
So many ways.
One in particular that just keeps coming back to the forefront is when I was in middle school. I wanted to try out for the volleyball team. I was so scared. Like, I'm pretty sure before the tryout, I was bawling, like, in the hallway because I was just so scared. And my mom had encouraged me. She said, like, go for it. Like, I know you're nervous, but imagine how good you'll feel if you make the team. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I went to try out, and in a terrible turn of events, I didn't have my physical form turned in. So I spent like a good 75% of the tryouts in the office trying to get that situated. Okay. So I ended up missing that entire thing. Aww. Didn't make the team, super deflated. Yeah. I was like, Mom, this is your fault. You didn't turn in my form. But because of that whole situation, like not seeing my name on that list for some reason, like even though I wasn't in the tryout, just in my head, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it then. And I was like a super athletic kid. All the coaches always wanted me on their teams for all these different sports. And I couldn't get myself to do it after that. And it ended up being like one of my biggest regrets in high school, just like not pursuing sports, because I loved sports. And I just think, I don't know if I ever told my mom like about the tryouts and stuff after that, just because I didn't want her to push me to do them, because I know she probably would have. Right. But yeah, that was just one of my biggest regrets. And I just want to make sure that for Luca, as she gets older, like I push her to do things that she's afraid to do. Right. Because like, just, I feel like when you pass up on those things because you're scared of them, you regret it. Like 9 out of 10, you regret it because you're just like, I should have, I wish I would have. And it's very strong. And it has the ability to affect the trajectory of your life. Yeah. Like if you pass up on something, which leads me to my next thing, just us packing up our lives and moving across the country. Yeah. I had never lived anywhere outside of Illinois. Okay. Never left Chicago. And Jordan had moved a few times. And so he was really comfortable with like, let's go to Virginia. Like, let's move. And I'm just like, ready. Let's go. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. But it ended up being one of the best things for our family. Yeah. And just looking back on it, it's like, I would not change what I decided to do. Yeah. And I would have regretted it if I stayed in Chicago. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Yeah, I think, it's one of those things where we're not always guaranteed a positive outcome when we face our fears.
That's true.
But we can't let a negative outcome then influence our decision the next time to face our fears. I had almost the identical thing in high school with volleyball too. And it was a youth sport at my school. And so I had never really played, but it seemed really interesting and kind of fun to me. But here was the catcher with me. I was always a cheerleader, and cheerleading tryouts came before volleyball.
Okay.
So that meant I couldn't do both.
You had to choose.
That meant I had to choose. So I would have had to wait for volleyball and maybe not make it.
Yes.
And then have
See,
nothing.
that's rough. Yeah, that's rough.
And so I was just like, no, I'm going for the sure thing. But I still regret that decision. I wish I would have
done volleyball instead.
just tried it. And, you know, in the end, maybe there was just something else waiting for me too. But there were definitely times though, like you said with your mom, like I know my mom kind of, okay, like help you face this fear, or maybe not even a fear, but that it's just something you just don't think, I don't think I could do that.
Yep.
I'm not necessarily afraid of it, but like for me, like
Underestimated yourself.
yeah, I was kind of like in our high school, we had when you were a rising senior, you could run for student council executive officers. And I was just commenting to my mom, my friend and I were commenting how like, oh, I think, you know, like, I don't know about these people running, you know, and she was like, why don't you two run for secretary and treasurer? And we were just like, really, like, you know, like, oh, okay, I guess we can. We ended up getting it. So
that's so cool.
It was just a neat experience that I wouldn't have really, you know, so maybe even sometimes it's helping your children see things in themselves that they can't see for themselves.
Yeah.
And it might not even necessarily be a fear per se, but just kind of this like, nah, I don't think I could do that. An insecurity, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think for us, you know, one thing that Sean and I have always said is, and we've tried to let our children know this, is never make a decision based on fear. So like if fear is your reason that you're not doing something, then that's not a good enough reason. So like if fear was your reason to not move down here, it was like the fear of the unknown, fear of leaving my family, fear, what if it won't work out? But it's all fear. That's not a reason.
No.
And you don't want that to be the driving force behind your decisions ever. And so just trying to teach our children that too is like, you know, so what is your reason for not trying out for that sport? Or what is your reason for not going on that trip with the youth group or, you know, or whatever it is, or not trying that class. You want to make sure that, number one, you're communicating enough with your kids to know what's going on. Because I don't think I really communicated to my parents that whole volleyball thing. I think I was just keeping it to myself. I was, you know, too insecure to even really talk about it to anybody.
Yeah.
But to try to be in your kids' world, to be able to know those things as much as they allow you in.
Yeah.
And then to be encouraging them in that way, I think is always a helpful thing. And and lead the way. Like if there's something in your life, parents, you know, I don't know what that looks like. It could look a lot of different ways for our parents today. But I just want to encourage you that not to allow fear to paralyze you and keep you stuck. I think that's one thing fear does. It keeps us a little bit stuck, and we don't have to be. So step out of your comfort zone and just know, like, even if the answer is not favorable in the way that you were picturing or hoping for, even just that act of stepping out of the fear is progress.
Yeah.
And it's taking a step forward.
Wow. I needed to hear this today, actually.
Yeah, good. Yeah, usually we're preaching to ourselves, right, Jayla? I feel like we're talking to ourselves on things. Totally. So if nobody else gets anything out of this, we definitely will.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope that you guys learned something from what you heard today. I hope you feel encouraged and empowered to face some fears in your life. And if you want to hear some more topics that me and Sarah discuss, you can find us anywhere that you can find podcasts. So Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. We've got so many different topics that we cover, and we'd love for you to join us. If you have any questions or any suggestions for future topics, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments, and we'll try our best to get to them.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.